Welcome to Smart Women Talk. This is your host, Katana Abbott. I'm a midlife millionaire coach and a certified financial planner, and I search the world for smart women and a few good men, including best-selling authors and thought leaders who are on that leading edge. So join us for conversations on money, business, health, and inspiration, so you can live with more purpose, passion, and prosperity. Welcome to Smart Women Talk. This is Katana Abbott, and our theme today is how to let go of the imposter syndrome so you can shine in the media spotlight. And I am going to be interviewing world-renowned media coach Susan Harrow about how to confidently build your business and brand through media appearances. We're going to talk about what it takes to get booked consistently and constantly on national media shows and how to make them count. Ways to exude executive presence while relaxing and being yourself during media appearances on podcasts, panels, and presentations. And how to use your content management strategy to grow your business with those media appearances. So let me tell you a little bit about Susan. Susan is a world-renowned media coach, marketing strategist, martial artist, and author of the best-selling book, How to Sell Yourself. It's actually Sell Yourself Without Selling Your Soul. For over 32 years, she's helped thousands of CEOs, entrepreneurs, and business innovators shine on Oprah, 60 Minutes, Today Show, Good Morning America, Fresh Air, Marketplace, National Public Radio, and CNN, without selling their souls. Her course, the Zen of Fame, Your Genius Gone Viral, shows people how to promote themselves with integrity and spirit. What you might not know is that she is a black belt in Aikido and was almost sold into slavery for 10 camels and a mule. So with that, welcome to Smart Women Talk, Susan. It is so great to have you back here.
It's so great. We were just talking, it was 10 years ago, and how wonderful it is that we women have stayed connected that way. And I think that's part of the beautiful natural way of publicity that connects, that sometimes you have no idea how long, what's going to happen or how long that's going to last. And I mean, I know for even myself, like somebody who saw me speak 8 years ago, connected someone else who I've worked with 20 years ago. I mean, it really opens up a whole world to you that you can't even imagine. And that's sort of the beauty and mystery of it.
You know, it's amazing too, because we both have been in this business for over 30 years.
Yeah.
And we're both still here. And we're in our third act and we're still here. That's what I mean. You know,
I know I hadn't even considered it my third act. I didn't realize I was that far along.
Isn't that amazing? I know, but there's a huge movement of these women that are in their third act and they're starting businesses and they are listening and watching today. So before we go into the media tips, what I'd love you to do is, can you tell us a little bit about your story? Because I'd love to know, is this something that, you know, you strive to do when, you know, you went to college to go into PR and, and this was your career? Or is it something, you know, that you fell into, or was there some kind of triggering event?
I love that you asked that question, because pretty much every single podcast or media interview is going to start with, why do you do what you do? How did you get started? And that's your signature story. And you might even have a couple of them. So I'm going to start with when I was in junior high, and I was part of 3 different groups. I was part of the jocks, because I've always been an athlete. I was part of the popular girls, and I was also part of the artist group. So I had those 3 different groups. And one day I was walking out, you know, in the expanse of the yard, and I saw a big group of people huddled around someone, and he was being pummeled. And I ran over there, and it was one of my artist's friends, and I pulled off the bully and screamed at everyone, like, what are you people looking at? And like, why does this even happen? And I said, get out of here, and made everybody go. And it wasn't in that moment that I realized it, but later I realized that I've always been a protector of beauty, of the misfits to the Renaissance people, the people who have kind of the wild ideas that have become the people who are really close to my heart, who I love to work with today. So I work with the people who are the innovators, the creative spirits, the people who are really making a difference to thousands or millions in a significant way and solving our most pressing problems.
Wow. So so that was like something that gave you that vision, but how did you end up doing media then?
Well, I know. I mean, yeah, I was an English major in focusing on Shakespeare. So how useful is that? But I've always loved language. And then I was in high-tech sales, and I was always taking writing classes. And there was a woman in one of my writing classes, and she was a publicist for the North Face. And I thought, gosh, that might be a really neat marriage of my sales ability and my storytelling ability. And so I just said to her, can I come and watch you? And so I went to her, her home, and she was doing like PR for Bill Graham Presents and, the Telluride Festival. So it's, big, rock concerts, all this kind of stuff. And so I just started watching what she did. And she said to me, why don't you jump up and make these calls? And since I was in sales, I was used to making calls, and I didn't have that fear. And in the old days, we didn't have the internet yet then. So we weren't sending things via email. And I just said, can I listen to you first to hear the pitch? And I just listened to her, and then I just got up on the phone and I started booking people. So I started as a publicist and started booking people on shows. And she didn't really love the client interface. And my first client was Missy Park of Title IX Sports. And at that time, she was just one person in a huge warehouse. And I started placing Missy Park in like the Wall Street Journal and all of these other places. And now she's the, I think, second biggest retailer in the country for athletic wear for women.
That is magical. And thank
It
God.
is.
Yeah. And thank God she was open to having you come.
Yeah, she was just a gal in my writing class. And then she turned over some business to me. She turned over Missy Park. She was my first client. And I just started growing from there. And, at that time I was focusing on artists, authors, and entrepreneurs, still super close to my heart. But now I'm working with, ed tech and educational tech companies and, just people in kind of expansive people who are solving those pressing problems in some way, shape, or form, the bigger kind of gender equality and, those kinds of people who are really looking at like, what are these issues that we need help with, that we want to sort of shift the national consciousness.
Yeah. Oh,
and a good bar of chocolate never. I love people. If you've got a snack or something, that's absolutely delicious, I'm totally open to that.
Yeah. It's funny. I took some media training years ago, and they said, if you're going to go to the TV stations, for example, they said, bring food. And whenever they're doing like a tasting, they're all acting starved.
Well, journalists are starving for the most part. So it always is a good idea to bring food or bring a gift, if that's acceptable in that particular media outlet. Yeah.
So let's talk about this idea of selling yourself without selling your soul. And is that one of the things that keeps women, from not seeking out publicity? I mean, are they feeling like it's a negative thing and they're going to look salesy or something? I'm sure that's what it is.
It's huge. I mean, I wrote Sell Yourself Without Selling Your Soul. I was speaking at the time, and it kept coming up that women felt that they were bragging, begging, or whoring to get publicity. And it doesn't need to be so. And so that's why I wrote Sell Yourself Without Selling Your Soul, to say, you know what? There's a way that you can do, people call it humble bragging, but I don't think you actually need to be humble. I think it's a way of showing your expertise and your authority through others and telling the kind of stories that connect to the audience and really serve the media. And if you start to think about it, if we can just flip our thinking into service versus self, then it really changes the whole atmosphere. But this is a huge thing for women, and it's also a huge thing to speak up. when you're on like a panel, on a TV panel, or any kind of panel or podcast where there's more than one guest, or you want to have the ability to jump in. And that takes some practice to be able to jump in, to wrangle a rambler, to know how to handle a hostile person, and really be able to role play those situations. So really, oftentimes when I work with women, either one-on-one or in a group mastermind or in a course, what I focus on is being able to handle themselves in any situation and actually do the role play, because you don't know how you're going to respond until you're actually in that situation. And there's research to back that, by the way, because there was recent research by, I don't know how to pronounce her name, but Judy Wodska, but she was looking at gender harassment in an interview. And she said, she asked all the women, like, how would you react if you were asked this inappropriate question? Now, every woman said, I would speak up. I would tell them, you can't talk to me that way. I would say that's inappropriate. I wouldn't take it. And then they put those women in actual interviews and nobody did anything like that. And so what happens is, what we think we're going to do, we don't actually know until we're in that situation. It's the same thing in martial arts, in Aikido. You have to practice that exact situation. You have to practice those different situations so you'll know what it feels like emotionally. So what they didn't anticipate was the emotional feel, like how it's going to be when somebody actually puts you on the spot in a media interview or in a sexual harassment situation. How, how is that going to feel? And then can you take that breath? Can you ground yourself? Can you say and do and be who you want to be?
Oh my gosh, I know what it is too, because I do all this stuff with money personalities. So when you ask them that question, they're in their head and they say one thing, but then when they actually are in the experience, then they feel it in their body. That's and right. All of our experiences are stored in their body. So when they feel it in their body, that is going back to a past experience that they had at some point in their life, and it's triggering them. And their little girl pops up and says, don't say anything, because you're going to get embarrassed, or you're going to mess up. And so then they shut down. And so what you said you just said that, you said they have to go into their body and breathe and move that energy, right?
That's exactly right. And I love that you brought up triggering, because I think that's what happens is we get triggered. So sometimes what happens is that's connected to an old experience or trauma or something that's happened before that we haven't resolved. And so I think publicity is much self-development as it is professional development, because you're mastering yourself to master the media, and you want to start to become aware of where your trigger points are. Somebody just called it a flash point, and I'm like, oh, I'm going to write that down. What's your flash? Isn't that great? I see you writing it down too. I hadn't heard it like that, and I tried to remember who. I was just in a casual conversation. I'm like, flash point. Yes, it's also a flash point or a flare, right? Like where we react and we don't respond in a way that we wish we had. Now, we can't imagine every single situation, but usually there's categories. And so we work on worst case scenarios, questions you don't want to be asked, personal, and because hostile interviewers can react in two ways. One, it's too intimate, and women get a lot of that, much more than men.
What does that mean?
It's too intimate a question. Katana, I love, the way that you your breasts are hiked up so nicely under your sweater. What kind of bra do you use?
Oh my God.
So that's an extreme, but do you know what I'm saying? Like if you're woman to woman, sometimes women do it to each other. It's not always a man, but a man might say something like, you have a little, financial literacy business. Katana, tell how you started your little business.
Oh,
so, immediately we're like,
and then again, you get the trigger in your body, and then you feel small. Oh my gosh.
That's a quiet way. And then there's the aggressive questions, which is the 60 minutes or the Bill O'Reilly. I used to train, my clients to be on Bill O'Reilly, where, you needed to know how to handle yourself when he interrupted you, when he wouldn't let you talk. And then you had to be able to interrupt back and get your point and hold steady. and not sweat and turn red and fumble, bumble, or freeze.
It's amazing you're just saying this, because I remember when I finally started going out and doing things in the public, and I got on boards, and I used to sit there and just be so worried that they were going to come to me and I would have to like talk about myself, and so you're talking about helping people with someone in the media that's interviewing them, when a lot of women still are, just the idea of having to do a little 30-second elevator pitch is scaring them to death. So what does a woman do when something like that does happen? How do they get their composure? Do you have some tips for us right now?
Yeah. So the first thing is what I said is remember to breathe, because we hold our breath, because what happens also neurologically is that when you what happens if you're not breathing is we can't access that part of the brain. It short circuits it increases cortisol and short circuits the memory of our short-term memory. So one of the things that you want to do is get into the long-term memory. You really want to dial in your messaging. So even if you're caught off guard, that you still have access to the long-term memory versus the short-term, and you can call on that. So the first thing to do is take a breath and then feel your feet on the floor, on the ground. So that's something that you can practice in the moment. But also I recommend, when I work one-on-one with people or in a mastermind group, we go through exercises that we do, or processes that we do on a regular basis. So you start to build up that mental and muscle memory in you. So we might do tapping, meditation, the one command, and then do breath work. So you already have it available to you, and you're already like 10 steps ahead. So another thing that you can just do in the moment is just again, you might just touch yourself. If you're in a seating, you can touch your own hand, because that brings you back to the body. And then you can use a transition phrase. You only use this one time, this one time, because otherwise it's a by time thing, but you can say, that's a fascinating question. That just gives you time to reorient yourself, and then you can say your message that you came to say.
And you're complimenting them.
And you're complimenting them. Actually, that's why I say just use that one time.
Yeah.
Because that's a really nice rapport builder, but it's also a buy time.
Well, and it also maybe kind of shakes them up a little bit that, wow, I didn't get her,
Mm-hmm.
And then you actually do a compliment, and then it gives you a chance to come back and come in with a different answer. So, and ground yourself. I love the idea of grounding yourself too. So a lot of times what I believe what happens is, we are in our head, which is fast twitch energy. And your idea of grounding to Mother Earth, I like to say, with our feet, is we're getting into slow twitch. And so even focusing on the base of our spine, where our
what's slow twitch? That's a
slow twitch energy. Yeah. And it's really at the base of our spine, in our base chakra. And so if we can focus on the base of our spine, and you can even do that by when you're breathing to just, bring your, like when you're breathing in and then you want to breathe out and squeeze your core, or like a little Kegel, and blow the air down to your feet. And then like a bellow, when you breathe it, when you relax your core, then it's like a bellow and it brings the air back in. And then all of a sudden you're just in a totally different
I love that. Now I just thought of an exercise that women could do, but you wouldn't do this on air. You would do it off, because when you talked about Kegel. So one thing that you can do that will really help release your energy really quick, and I learned this from Stig Sivertsen, who holds the world record for holding his breath 20 minutes under ice. Yes. So I took his breath class, because there's all different kinds of, because if we can control our breath, we can control ourselves, we can control the world. We're not trying to control other people, but the key is your breath. So one of the exercises he had us do is you tighten your throat, you do a Kegel, so you're tightening your You're tightening your anus as well as your Kegel area, your vajayjay area. However, I don't know. There's a nice way to say it.
Well, and it's mula bandha. Remember?
Your mula bandha. Yeah. So you're doing whole mula bandha. So it's here. You're pulling your core together in the mula bandha, and so you're doing your vajayjay and your anus all together. So you take a breath in and hold all together, and then you release it. And you can make a sound like that. And you can actually, you'll feel the energy like all along the core and down there. You can just feel it like, so the longer you hold your breath too, the more you get that whoosh of energy. But that's something that you can practice on your own, to just be able to pull your energy together and pull yourself to your body. Just that kind of awareness here, 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 right? Like just to have that awareness of the internal muscles of our body is helpful.
Yeah.
Do you think?
And I think so many of us hold our breath. And they say if you hold your breath on the inhale, it raises your stress. And if you hold your breath on the exhale, you lose your energy. And I constantly just hold my breath on the exhale and then do little tiny shallow breaths. And I notice it. And because there's the heart core, they have a little thing you can wear, heart math it is, and it tells you, yeah, if you're not breathing and stuff. So if people can get a little tool like that, they can say, oh my gosh, I'm not breathing, I need to breathe. You know, that's a great way to do it. But just to notice, are you holding your breath on the inhale or the exhale? And then just practice this breathing. What Dr. Sue from the Year of Miracles, she uses the channel breath where you're breathing in through the sun to your core, down to Mother Earth, and then back up. And so you're breathing this way. And I like to stop in the core, and that's where you. And then for some reason, it takes that sun energy and Mother Earth, I call it, you know, the grounding and the energy, because we all want to shine and be powerful. And I think this is going to help everybody.
I love that. And I love we're focusing on the breath and bringing ourselves back to the body, because I do think there's a resistance to being in the body. And the more we can be in our body and the more we can feel ourselves as people who are worthy to walk this earth, then we strengthen that in ourselves and we strengthen that in others. I wrote down a quote from the Tao Te Ching, which explains, when you are true to yourself, you are true to the Tao, you remind those around you of who they've always been. So I love that when you bring yourself into this resonance, you can bring others to it. And I think women can really relate to this in terms of their children, but also with customer clients, students, your course participants. I think it's everyone. We only change ourselves. We don't change the world. So it's this working on ourselves and being the example that we want in the world. I love Gandhi's phrase, my life is my message. So everything you do, say, are, and think needs to be in complete alignment before you put your offer into the world. And that's when things really start to happen in an organic and natural way, and that everything sort of lines up.
So, you know, I'm so glad we talked about this thing with the breath and the body and getting calm, because we're going to now talk about some of the tips of marketing and PR. And without being able to be confident in your body, none of the tips are going to matter, because you're just going to glaze over and go blank. So, or just, you know, you don't want to get up there and turn into, you know, dripping mess either, because you're just too scared. So
yeah, I remember one person who wanted to become a client said her biggest fear was, well, she had a couple big fears, but one of her biggest fears was that the media interview would turn into a monologue. She was invited onto a podcast that had 1 million subscribers, so it was really big, and she hadn't. She said, I don't want it just to be talking all about me. That was number one, a monologue about myself. Her second fear was that she would be inundated with newbie people wanting a piece of her, that they would want to, you know, she would be inundated with calls, and somebody said to her, you're going to be exhausted 2 days later. And then the third thing was that she didn't have a funnel. And I said, well, we can work on all three of those things. You want to say this, you want to work on stories that really resonate with the audience, with what they want to know, but you also are speaking to the kind of clients and customers and business that you want to grow your business, and you're designing those stories specifically to that, then of course you're going to have your system set up so you move people into wherever, so they can get to know you better, whatever level they are ready to engage with you. But part of that is taking those newbies, and they don't have access to you. They need to have, and we as women are so generous, it's like we think we have to service everyone. No. So those newbies will get access to information that will help them grow. And then the last part is, the call to action. Like, she and I were talking that even if you have the right call to action, you have the right stories, that even one person for that podcast, if one person engaged with her, that would mean millions of dollars in business, And then I was just on the phone with another super high level woman yesterday, and we were talking about, like, one of the titles of the pod. She's adding more people to her financial real estate brokerage firm, and she said, I'm really mentoring some of these newbies, and I'm spending a lot of time on that. And I said, well, why? I mean, who do you actually want in there? And she said, I need experienced real estate agents. And I said, well, what's the criteria for that? Because we want to put that criteria into what you're saying. So then those are the people that are going to reach out to you. And when you do get newbies, because you want some, those are funneled to her. Those are going to be funneled to her. She just hired, an engagement person that is going to groom those newbies, but she's not going to talk to them. So she said, oh my gosh, the title of one of my podcasts that I've been doing is talking about how, I think it was something about how stay-at-home moms could become superstar real estate investors. I'm like, well, then you're going to get stay-at-home moms. And and so she's like, we have to reshape that whole conversation. So even the title of what she's talking about, to start to move those people who she wants to build her business and brand into. So it is and she's extreme, multi-millionaire. So it's this kind of consciousness that we're shifting as women to say, if we want to serve everyone, let's put systems in place that we can, but in a way that serves us. And we're looking at what her important things for her were: significance, joy, and I can't remember the third one, but it was like having more time to herself. And I said, well, then we want to look at these things that are important to you and make sure that they're incorporated into your PR campaign and what you say in every media interview. Does that make sense?
Oh, it's so amazing. What you just talked about was values.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I was thinking about that even.
Values, and what life do you want to live for yourself, and how do you want to grow your business and brand?
Right.
And who do you want to work with, and what is the structure of your business, and is it supporting that? And then, is everything you do, say, are, and think, and when you're on these media interviews, is it supporting that? So you can protect your time, your energy, and give what you want, what you're here to give, what you came to this earth to give.
And so what you're saying is so important, because most of the people that are out there, they're having to do the front stage. I call it front stage work. Business development, it's media, it's being the spokesperson, it's the idea person. And if that's your unique ability, then what you need to do is find someone who loves to do the backstage work.
Yes.
Follow up all the details. And
yes, absolutely.
And there's one other thing. And I got this from one of my clients, and it was brilliant. It's like a Z. Yeah, it's like a Z. So usually the entrepreneur is the idea person, and then they need someone that they can share the idea with. And then that person will tell them, they will say, okay, let's put a pin in it, or that's a great idea, let's go for it. But they'll save it for them they'll save it for them somehow, right? And then that goes down to the other corner, and they need a refiner. Because if you have an idea, and then the refiner will refine it and clean it up and give it to the implementer. Because for years I had an idea and I just gave it to the implementer, and it was a disaster. So does this make sense?
Yes. So you need the refiner in there. You need the refiner, and then you test your ideas out in the marketplace, right? And see how it resonates. Yeah.
Absolutely. So what you have been talking about there, is that what you call a marketing funnel?
Yes. Part
About
of it.
how, yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, a marketing funnel. So it's having those three things in place. So we talked about the Zen of Fame, Your Genius Gone Viral. In that course, I have three different sections. The first is your messaging, because you before you reach out to the media, you want to have your messaging down, your key messaging. What is it that you're looking to grow in your business? So you want to have your messaging down before you reach out to the media. And then the second part is you want to have your systems in place. That's your marketing funnel. So you can move people through an engagement sequence, whatever that is for you, right? Whether it's on your website, whether it's a phone call, whether, whatever that engagement sequence is, whether it's an excerpt of your book, to buy the book, to go into your course. And then the third part of that is to actually create a PR campaign, a strategic PR campaign where you're reaching out and getting booked in the media in a way that suits your personality and your style and your energy. And really thinking about, like, when I work with I work with PR firms, they do the booking, I do the media training. And what we really look at is, where should we start this person? So I have a current client now who's in the leadership space, and she's got she did incredible research that she started 10 years ago, and it's now starting to move into the general public, and other leaders are using it, but it's not credited to her. And it's her original research, and she's got case studies to support this in lots of different companies over those past 10 years. So what we're starting for her is starting a campaign focusing on print first, because it's much harder to steal things when they're in print. She has a book, but where it's, self-published. So we're moving first into the print space, so it's solid, it's on this earth, right? And then we're moving into the podcast space, and then lastly would be TV and radio, and then TV, because you want to sort of grow your expertise as well in your comfort level. You want to move outside of your comfort zone, but not like at a big leap. We're doing it gradually, but establishing your expertise. And so you are established as the thought leader or the person in your space that then, if there's trademark issues or copyright issues, it's already been established. And that's really important for women too, because we're so generous with our information, and things can be so easily stolen now on the internet. And and I know this happened all the time in NSA, where somebody would tell a story and somebody would steal that story, even though it was their personal story. So you put that in print, and you start to groove it in podcasts like yours or on TV, so that story is your story. So if somebody else tells it, they go, wait a minute, that's Katana's story. That's not your story, right?
Absolutely. Wow, that's great. So let's take a moment here, because I know before we started our show today, we talked a little bit about this program you have, the Zen of Fame. I mean, what a great name. What is that? Is that where you take people through this stuff? Because
Yeah.
the biggest thing we find, we have a survey that we have, and women do when they come in to unlock your financial power at our academy. And the big issue is no one really knows where to start. You hear, you got to do this, you've got to do that. No one really knows where to start. And you said, messaging, systems, and then the PR campaign. So I've got the messaging and systems. I don't have a PR campaign, so I'm really interested to hear this. And I know others are listening and feeling the same way. Maybe they haven't even done the messaging yet.
Yeah, so the messaging comes first. So there's a process that I use where we just listen to the way that you speak naturally, and then start to hone those stories into a form. And so within the course, the Zen of Fame, Your Genius Gone Viral, I have lots of templates, because I think people work really well with templates. Like, there are certain forms that you are going to hear over and over and over again. And a simple one, for example, that you can use right now is headline. So a strong headline, 1, 2, 3. You always hear this on podcast. Number 1, my advice. Number 2, number 3. So headline 1, 2, 3, and then you wrap up with an epiphany. So I could have said, if I was talking about the course, there's 3 things that are necessary for a PR campaign. So that's my headline. It doesn't have to be super sexy. It can just be like that. Or, it could have been like, the biggest mistakes that people make is not having these 3 things in place for a PR campaign, right? So I could do it one of those 2 ways, and there's probably a dozen ways I could do it. Number 1, they don't have their messaging down. Number 2, they don't have their systems in place. And number 3, they don't have a very conscious PR campaign that is going to put them into the places where they're going to be seen, heard, and connecting with the people that they want to do business with.
Wonderful.
So that would be an example. So we've templated those kinds of things. And in that course, we also offer the course on its own, which you can go through at your own pace. So there's videos in there. There's lots of support in PDFs, videos, audios, all the different mediums. And the other level of support, if this resonates with you, is to be in a mastermind with me where once a week you're in a group working through any kind of challenge that you have, but also can role play actual media interviews, so everything from the uninformed, the rambler, the interrupter, the hostile, just to shape your campaign and do that on a gradual basis. Because here's the thing, when I work with the PR firms as well, we work first with getting the core messaging down. And then after that, it's an iterative process. You're booked on a segment, or you're booked in print, for example, and then I media train you to those mediums and to that specific medium. Because print is way different than planning for a podcast, right? And how you can manage those interviews. And then we look at, what did you do well and what do you want to shift for next time? So then those 10,000 hours of improvement is like you're making little changes the whole way through. You can say, oh my God, this is where I got derailed, or I wished I would have said that and I totally forgot, and all, which happens. It happens to all of us. It happens to me too. I'm like, oh my God, that was one point I wanted to make and I totally forgot. So it's about being compassionate with yourself, but really starting to become aware of what we talked about, those trigger points, but really being able to manage yourself in those interviews so you are connecting deeply with your audience and you share the things that you came to share, and really what you came to give.
Oh, and I love that, because even if you do an event and then you feel it was horrible, others are not, you have such a high standard for yourself, they're not going to know. But the most important thing we can do whenever we have a mistake or a bad experience is to breathe and then sit down and look at it, because our mistakes and issues like that are our greatest teacher.
I agree. And I think you're wrapping up, but I want to make sure to talk about imposter syndrome because we haven't touched on that, just in case. So, so if we can, that would be super great. Because I think, it was so funny because in my own mastermind class where I'm being mentored by someone, one of the people in that class said, Susan, I don't think you should call it imposter syndrome because I think a lot of women don't relate to that. And I said, really? She said, you should call it like occasional self-doubt or something. I'm thinking, gosh, I don't know. I'm seeing imposter syndrome everywhere and people kind of actually glorifying it. Like, I have imposter syndrome, and then talking about their situation where they're stuck in imposter syndrome. And I thought, well, we're just grooving it in then. Yeah. If we're giving constant kudos for having imposter syndrome. So do you mind, should I go and talk?
Oh, no, I want to do that because, and I'll say something because about that. I was at American Express Financial Services, and I got invited to come to this women's organization because I had raised $10,000 for them,
Bravo.
A sponsorship for them. Yeah, it was really exciting. So it's all these VPs from the big companies in Detroit. I go into the special boardroom before the event, and they all think I'm a vice president of American Express. See, and I left there and I went, wow, people see us so differently than we see ourselves, because we see ourselves through that eyes of that little girl with all those disempowering beliefs, right?
Yeah.
And that's where you feel like a fake, the imposter syndrome. So I think it's a major issue. It's probably the biggest issue that we have is these beliefs, because they keep us playing small. So please share.
Yeah, I really think so too. So I want to address this on a super practical level because we all have our own blocks, beliefs, and patterns. We just have them. So to think that this is going to go away, when I say let go of it, I really mean it's a process. Just like doing these media interviews is an ongoing process. We're always taking shape and reforming ourselves. So I think that we're really three people. We are our past, we are our present person, and then we are our future self. So when you keep in mind your future self, how do I want to be? What do I want to live into? What's the legacy I want to leave? And to really have this in your mind. It's the same thing when I work with anyone, we talk about, what do you want the results to be of your media campaign? Like, what is it that, and are we always moving toward that? So we're always looking at that. So when we're going through that iterative process and you go, darn, I didn't do this in the media interview, it's like we're keeping that deepest intention, how I want to serve and what I want to give to in the interview. Always we're keeping that in mind and then moving toward that. And it's the same thing with imposter syndrome. So it's like when you have that jealous pang, you're on a panel and somebody gets introduced and you go, oh my God, their credentials are like so much bigger than mine and they've done so much more. And oh my God, I'm small, I'm little, and I don't even want to talk now. And she's got the light and I'm going to be in the shadows and nobody's going to like me. Like these are all the things that are running through our mind at the same time, right? So the first thing to think about is to take that breath and to say to yourself, focus on what is it that I am here to give, that only I can, that my prepared, you've prepared some talks, but in retrospect, you want to say, does that person have qualities that I want? And if so, you want to set yourself up on a path to move toward those qualities. But in the moment when we feel that excruciating compare and despair, that's when we want to take the breath and bring us back to ourselves and say, who do I want to be in this moment? And what am I here to give the audience? And then to prepare for that, and you can do this before you do any kind of panel, is really start to gather all of your testimonials, your random compliments. And I know whenever I'm feeling like super insecure, I call up all of my friends and say, just tell me all the good things about myself. Tell me. And then they say these things that I'm like, really? And my friend Sark, who's really, she's really great at this kind of thing. She's the one person that I call too.
Sark, did you say Sark?
Yeah, Sark.
Yeah. Oh, wonderful.
Yeah, she's one of my dear friends. And so one of the things that she asked for, it wasn't this last year, but the year before, for her birthday present, she had us all write out everything that we loved about her. And yes, and all the circumstances. And so she has that in a file, so if we're doubting ourselves, we need to look at, number one, our accomplishments really on paper. We want to have those. So we're like, is this really true? Like the Byron Katie question, like, is this really true? Do you have evidence of this? And then have your evidence already stacked up. So you can say, actually, it's not about the evidence, it's about my feeling inside, right? And then we have processes like tapping and like the one command to work on those feelings when they come up. So as you continually to work on those issues, they diminish. Because long ago, I just read another piece on Vivekananda, Swami Vivekananda. And he's not someone very well known in the Western culture, but my mom brought back all his books from India when she went like 30 years ago, and I read them all. And one of the things that he had said is, in terms of focusing on the self, is that we never teach anyone anything. We just bring out the good in other people. And so what I think about in imposter syndrome is if we're focusing on bringing out the best in other people. And so if we're not doing that for ourselves, then other people, you can't do it for someone else. Right. So, yeah.
Oh my gosh. And then also all their credentials don't mean anything if people hear you speak or have a conversation with you and that comes through.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. And
authenticity and service. Yeah. Oh, I love that. Well, okay. So we're at the top of the hour and I will point out how you are so brilliant on an interview is that you reminded the host.
Oh,
So I had lots of things I wanted to ask
yes,
you,
yes.
but you brought up the most important thing, which we really didn't want to miss this. So I think people should point that out. I
I
mean,
just heard a great phrase on Terry Gross. She just did an interview yesterday with this woman on, it was on the child care issue and gender inequality right now. And she said, what was the phrase that she said that was so great? She goes, you haven't yet asked me about thus and such. And she went right into it. She goes, we haven't yet touched on thus and such. And she just went into it because it was something important about women in the workplace. I don't remember what it is, but I'm like, I have to write down that phrase. And I was driving, so I couldn't write it down, but I'll have to go back to that interview and find the exact phrase. But I love that because Terry Gross is such a fantastic interviewer, but this woman wanted to get out this one point that hadn't been asked. And she said, we haven't touched on this or something like that. And then she went into it.
and you just did that.
I guess I did. I guess I incorporated it.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Love
So
it.
yeah. So I just learned that I'm always on the lookout for those kinds of things because the way that I developed the Zen of Fame course and my whole philosophy in working with people is watching people who do this well and reverse engineering it and then putting it into a form or a formula or a template if possible. I'm like, why was that person so effective? And then I reverse engineer it and write it out and say, well, that's a format that we don't try to take what you say and jam it into something that doesn't fit. We go, oh, can it be more succinct and can it be better if we tighten up the form? And sometimes not. There's a million forms. There's not just one way of saying something, but it's a way of consistently being able to create your own messaging in a way that's easy for you.
Right. Because it has to roll off your tongue
Yeah.
or you're going to feel like a fake.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. It's got to feel good to you too.
Yes.
That's the most important thing. It's got to feel good in your own bones.
Yeah.
And so don't ever let any media trainer try to put words in your mouth that don't feel like your own. Or anyone for that matter.
Yep. And when you get aligned with your brand. And so just this last year, I rebranded from Retirement Reinvention to my registered trademark Midlife Millionaire.
Which is brilliant.
But I had it hidden all these years. It was there, but not really. And long story about it, but a dear friend, and I got in her program and she had the whole class vote on it, on Zoom. And it was
brilliant.
And it was like, and I went back and I did it immediately. And then everything shifted. So I'll also say that when we're not aligned with our path, with our life path or our purpose, and what happens sometimes, well, I think it happens a lot, is it gets very difficult. And it's because the universe is going, you're on the wrong path. You've got to readjust. So then when you get aligned with your messaging and your branding, everything shifts.
That's such a brilliant point. I'm so glad you brought that up because words are the ambassadors of our spirit. And you making that shift then shifted everything. So that's the importance of words, but it's also the importance of the feeling tone behind the words, your tone, the way that you communicate it, your facial language, your body language, and your verbal language. That's what all needs to be in sync, and your enthusiasm. And then and what's resonating with people was that particular phrase. And when I heard you say it, I'm like, oh my God, it's so brilliant. And I saw it on there. I'm like, well, that's brilliant because it you know exactly what it is. And it's easy to say, and it's easy to remember, and it's what you do.
Right. And I finally have it out there and I'm just so excited. So on the next show, I'll give a little, next show, I'm going to bring in my web designer, the copywriter, and then the funnel person that helped me with rebranding and getting it all in place, because I think we need this. So we brought you first. Yes. And then we're bringing them to talk about that because people probably want to know more about that too. But so how do people connect with you? Because this has just been such a brilliant conversation and you brought so many, I mean, they're going to want more. I know everyone listening wants to know more. And your website is such a perfect example of, a nice way to get to know you, let's say.
Thank you.
Because you have wonderful.
We just rebranded,
I think it's Yeah.
Yeah, which is why we took so long to coordinate this interview, because there was a lot of things in that. So it's prsecrets.com. And on there, there's a whole section of free, there's a whole section of free things that you can download. So that's a wonderful place to start. Should we mention one of the names of the things?
Yeah. And like when I first came in, I just signed up for it. You have an offer immediately. And then, yeah. So can you, go ahead and talk about it so they know what to expect. Because it's definitely worth it.
It's a pop-up, which
Yes.
I pop down. So it's the 100-word email that can get the media to call you. So it's how to be super succinct when you're pitching. And again, you want to have your messaging down before you do the pitch, but this is a way to just have a very succinct pitch, because we're all so time scrunched now that really the paragraph pitch is starting to be the way to go. You can always give more information later. And then the other one was Own Your Worth, 5 ways to say no without blame, shame, or I think I said something else, but I can't remember. But I wanted to give that to your women too, because it focuses on how to set boundaries, but it also gives you these really great scripts in nice ways to say no, and how to navigate the no's in ways from somebody asking to pick your brain to asking you for inappropriate things. So, or asking for, I think I've got asking for a raise, or asking for, just asking for more of whatever that you want in there. Yeah.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Well, so say the website again.
prsecrets.com. Thank you for prompting me.
Yes.
So prsecrets.com, like public relations, secrets.com. And I look forward to meeting all of you. There's a place there where we can connect on any level that's right for you.
Wonderful. Wonderful. And when your next program comes out, anyone who's on our mailing list, we'll also help promote your next event coming up, because I really want to share you with everyone. So thank you so much for coming here today and sharing your brilliance and just being so generous.
Thank you so much. I'm so thrilled, and I can't wait to reconnect with all of your audience, since it's been 10 years. You have a lot of people who we've all aged gracefully together, and then new people coming in. So I can't wait to meet all of you. Thank you, Katana.
Now we're the sages.
I love it.
So do you have one smart women tip you'd like to leave us with?
You must have a content messaging strategy. So what that means is you want to have a variety of stories, statistics, facts, vignettes, anecdotes, analogies that shape the way that you work in the world, that is going to grow your business in the direction that you want. So it's a very conscious strategy that you then integrate into the normal flow of conversation. Why is that necessary? I just listened to a podcast host, and she said, oh my God, she said, I had on this really famous, well-known speaker, and he completely bombed. And she said she couldn't figure it out. And I talked to him afterwards. What he goes, I'm not getting anywhere with my podcast. Like nothing's coming of them. And she said, well, did you prepare for this? He said, no, I just wing it. So my tip is, don't ever wing it. Mm-hmm. Be completely prepared. So be completely prepared so you can be free to be spontaneous. But you want to have your key messages down that you can integrate into the flow of the conversation. So each time you're on a podcast or a TV show or print, whatever that is, you are reaching the people that need and want what you have, and you're growing your business in the direction that you want.
Wow. Perfect. And that's a little bit about sound bites. So if women want more of you, visit prsecrets.com. Whoa. Thank you again.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
All right. Wonderful. So everyone, thank you for joining us. We just love sharing these wonderful thought leaders and change agents with you. If you want to know who is coming to the show, please come to joinsmartwomen.com. You'll get our monthly theme-based easing, and you'll know who the guests are, and the guests share articles and goodies. And when they have an event coming up, we promote it. So you want to go to joinsmartwomen.com and join the Smart Women community. And don't forget to subscribe to Smart Women Talk at your favorite podcast platform, as well as our YouTube channel where you can actually watch it. And it's YouTube Katana Abbott. So until our next show, Go out and live with more purpose, passion, and prosperity. Smart Women Talk is brought to you by Smart Women's Empowerment, a 501c3 nonprofit project of United Charitable. Music by Bill Lucas from his album When It Rains. Available on Apple Music and Spotify. Catch us wherever you listen to your favorite podcast, and be sure to join our free community at joinsmartwomen.com to access all our free Smart Women resources.